Hello and welcome to another episode of Just Onside. And as you can see today, there's three boxes. There is a missing man, but we've finally been able to track the man down. The man has lots of money has been exchanged, but can you reveal yourself, Mr. Baggio?
Is this thing on? How do we do
Oh,
this?
he's back!
Oh,
Lordy Lord, the man is back. The man is back.
yes.
Oh, goodness.
Oh, it
The
feels good to
viewers
be
have
back.
been waiting for this for such a long time. It's an absolute pleasure to have you back.
It's a pleasure to be back. It's a pleasure to be back. I've been itching to get back, but
He hasn't been itching to get back. We've had to force him back on the show, but it's absolutely delightful to have you back.
Thank
How
you.
are you? How's fatherhood?
The fatherhood's good. Fatherhood's good. All right. So I see the viewers are already privy to why I've been away. I thought it was going to be a mystery, and I was just going to make something up, but I guess not. Yeah, fatherhood's been good.
Yeah,
man.
well, I was going to try and sort of say, but he's been to Turkey, and as you can see on the top of his head.
Yeah, it'd be more believable if it was you two, but no, it's been good. It's been good.
It was almost like a delay there. It took about a second before I got the joke.
No, it's been good. It's been great. It's been a good few weeks for me, but we're back at it, baby. We're back at it, and I've missed some juicy topics. So I do apologize.
There have been some rumors, Badge. You can perhaps put them to rest once and for all. But obviously, what with Man City beating your team in the FA Cup final, then obviously securing the treble, matching your team's achievements in the 1990s. Now, there was some rumours abound that you'd taken it quite badly and chose to conveniently miss those episodes. Maybe this is your opportunity to put that to bed.
What kind of cynical thinking is that? I had a kid, for God's sake.
No, those were the views from me and OS.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. That makes sense.
And OS, how are you, sir?
I'm doing good, thanks. Friday afternoon, Friday evening, end of a challenging week, but ready to rock and roll, ready to discuss some football.
Excellent. And I think we recorded on Tuesday. That was myself and OS. A marathon. I think it was nearly 1.5 hours. So we'll spare you this time. Seeing as Baj is here, he obviously is a stickler for time. So we'll try and sort of keep it short, but interesting, hopefully. So the first topic that we'd like to discuss is Declan Rice and his proposed move to Arsenal. I don't think it's finalised, but it's as good as done. And it's 105 million. So the question is, 105 million for Declan Rice. Is he worth it? And what's he going to bring the Arsenal? A man that admires him tremendously is Baj. So I'll give him the floor. What's your thoughts, Baj?
I really like Declan Rice. Let me just start by saying that I really like him. I think he's a very good footballer. Oh, if we're talking strictly sums, he's not worth 105. I think we all know that. He's not worth that. It's what West Ham valued him at. City have kind of baited Arsenal into paying that, I'd like to say. I'm sure they were interested, but not to the degree where they were like, we're gonna cause a stink here and like keep getting a bidding war.
So you think they've just done it for that reason? They were never interested.
I think if they got him for what they offered, they wouldn't mind it. But I don't think they were ever going to get in a bidding war with Arsenal for him per se. Now, tomorrow a bid could come in and I could look very silly here. But I'm pretty sure that is the case. They drove the price up and Arsenal panicked and gave it. Well, not panicked, but they jumped up a considerable amount and went for 100 and then 5 with add-ons. Now, he's a very good player, as I've stated. He's got good qualities. I do like his characteristics. He's not worth 105 million. I don't know if he's going to take Arsenal to that, if he's going to take them to that next step, that next level, and win them trophies. I think he is a good addition to the side, but if you see what Newcastle have paid for Sandro Tonali, that's 70 million. I don't think there's that much of a difference between the two, personally. Sandro Tonali, obviously, people might be outraged by that comment just because of Rice and they like not strictly watch the Premier League, but predominantly watch the Premier League. But Tonali and him are very similar in profile in how they play. industrious, they're tenacious, they win the ball back, good reading of the game, and also good on the ball. Like Tonali is very good on the ball. Newcastle got him for 70, so I think he's. I do think Declan Rice is also a little overrated.
I knew
By
it was coming.
media
I
and
knew
fans
it was coming. I knew it was coming.
I genuinely feel like he is, because yes, he's in a West Ham team, and the arguments against me have been, yeah, he's in a West Ham team, so he can't really show his true, his best, shall we say. But at the same time, I do think we have seen his best so far. And I like him. I just don't think he's a midfielder that's worth 105 million. I don't think he has. I don't think he's going to massively take Arsenal to the next level. I think it's a good addition. City going in for him made absolutely no sense to me. He's an industrious midfielder. Like that's his main profile, I'd say, as a midfielder. But I don't know how he'd fit into that City team. It didn't quite make sense to me. But I think in Arsenal he fits. I think if he went to Liverpool, he'd fit to a degree. If he went to United, he'd fit. But City made no sense to me. But I think it's a good signing. I think they've overpaid. But I guess that's just what the market dictates right now. Good player, yet to prove he's a great player. But we'll see. We'll see going forward. But yeah, that's my thoughts on Declan Rice. And I know Uwais feels passionately about him, so I'll hand it over, mate.
No, look, we've discussed this topic even long before the Arsenal rumours were there. So we've been discussing Declan Rice for quite some time. So you've been fairly consistent on that and measured in your view as well. Look, I was scouring Google to see if I could find some sort of independent player valuation office, but unfortunately one doesn't exist. It's only between the selling club and the buying club as to what a player's worth. Yep. And look, if you look at the various factors what affects a player's price, ultimately he had 1 year left on his deal, but there was a club option at the end of that. So that's essentially 2 years left on his deal, which means that you're going to have to pay his full value, let's say, of what you represent in terms of what his abilities are. So I always felt it was going to take 100 million. David Ornstein yesterday commented that Manchester City were interested, and obviously they did submit a bid. To your point, were they ever going to get to 100 million? Perhaps not. There were some comments made by their chief executive today that they don't quite do their business that way. They have a valuation of a player and they don't tend to go above that. So look, in the end, what matters is what his valuation is for Arsenal Football Club, how they see him, how they view him. And he was their number one target throughout the summer. A lot of talk that the deal was done from a player club perspective some time ago, that deal was in the pipeline for quite some time, and that Arsenal were always his preferred destination. And look, in the end, from an Arsenal perspective, if he's your number one target and you believe he can take you to the promised land, now the proof's in the pudding. He will have to show, like you said, Badge, he will have to show that he is of that ilk, the type of ilk where you can carry that 100 million price tag and take your club and make an impression on the pitch consistently. But I think if you believe he's your number one player and you want to get him, then paying a little bit of a premium to get him onto your books is well worth it, I would say. So look, he's 24 years of age. He's played a lot of games for West Ham. He's played 100 games over the last 2 seasons, so he's always available, let's say. So he's quite durable. Obviously, he led his team to the Europa Conference League title as well. It was ready. He was always going to move this summer, wasn't he? He's probably one of 3, I would argue, at least definitely one of 2 absolute dead certs for that England team alongside Harry Kane. I would argue maybe Jude Bellingham's kind of just got himself in there as well, I would say. So those 3 are like first names on the team sheet for the next couple of years for sure.
Would you put Rice on that team sheet before Bellingham?
No. So what I simply mean is, I think if Rice is fit, he plays. If Kane's fit, he plays. There's no real alternative. Obviously, if Calvin Phillips played more than the 100 minutes for Man City, there might have been some competition. But anyway, we digress. But look, in the end, you talk about whether or not he's worth that. If you look at some of the most expensive signings in football, yes, you've got some final third footballers, Neymar and Mbappe, leading the way in terms of a crazy and obscene amount of money being exchanged. But you see some central midfielders there as well, slightly different ilk, Enzo Fernandez, Paul Pogba, to name a few. He's not that type of player, although Enzo Fernandez we need to see a little bit more of at Chelsea Football Club. But my argument is ultimately what's to say a good quality defensive midfielder, especially now when the game's so much based on athleticism and dynamic football, that position can't be valued at that particular price. And the final thing I would say, just in the first pitch, because I want to hear Ayub's thoughts, is ultimately this is Arsenal Football Club realizing that they've got a manager that they believe in, they've got a squad that they believe could challenge for the title next season again, and they're obviously backing their manager. And I think we can all attest and agree that when you're in that position where you think you've got the manager, whether people agree or disagree whether Arteta is somebody who can take them to the promised land, what you try and do is you absolutely back him to the hill, and that's what Arsenal are doing in the summer transfer window. And similarly, if you say, for example, let's say later on in this transfer window, if Man United submitted a bid of, let's say, 80 million for Harry Kane, and Daniel Levy said it's 100 million and he's yours, I think there's a large proportion of United fans that will say, you know what, if it's 20 million and there's a good chance we could win the Premier League title, and I say good chance because nothing's a dead cert, you'd like to think your club will back your manager and say, we're going to go get this striker for you because we think he can deliver you to the promised land. So it's a great bit of business for Arsenal, in my opinion. But in the end, you're right, Badge. Nothing's won on paper. Nothing's proven just because you've got a top player. He now has to prove that he can, kind of compete with those elite central midfielders in European football.
I was just going to say, I don't think he's a top player, but that's fine.
That's your opinion.
Yeah, of course.
Firstly, I mean, in terms of value, I think Baz, you touched upon it. I mean, it's a sort of glib answer, but you're worth as much as somebody's prepared to pay for you.
Correct.
So if somebody's prepared to pay 105 million, you're worth it.
Yep.
I'm a massive fan. I am a huge fan of Declan Rice. I'm still trying to work out exactly what type of midfield player he is. I mean, Baz, you said he's an industrious player, which he is. I think he is. I mean, in terms of the most number of tackles made, he has. But I think there's much more to his game.
Yeah.
I think he's he can be the complete midfield player. I think defensively he's excellent. I think he's superb with the ball as well because he can beat players. I think he's deceptively quick. He doesn't always give the appearance that he's quick, but I think he's quite a rangy sort of fella. I think the thing missing at this moment in time is the number of goals. I think that's what he needs to focus on. I think perhaps when he goes to Arsenal, when he plays with better players, does it make it easier? So that's really what I'm going to sort of wait and see. As a character, he's fantastic. I think every time that you listen to an interview with Declan Rice, he's superb. It comes across really
does
well.
Come across very well.
He's a real student of the game. I mean, we've talked about this before. He's a real. He loves the position. He has a great deal of reverence for those who have played in the position as well. And I think he just wants to get better and better and better. I think he is one of the best midfield players in England. I can't wait to see him for the Arsenal. I really can't wait because I just think with the players around him, it's a step up. I mean, no disrespect to West Ham, but the Arsenal players that they've got at their disposal at this moment is a considerable step up. So it will be interesting. As I said, I'm intrigued to find out what role does he have. Is he going to be a holding midfield player? Is he going to be a box-to-box? Or does Arteta have something different in mind? So I think it's an excellent acquisition. I think 105 million. The fact is, English is always going to bump the price up.
Of course.
But in terms of the value, he's 24 years of age, so he's a young player. He's going to get better and better and better. I think it's a good piece of business. So for me, he's worth 105 million.
Yeah, just a couple of things before, because Badge, I want to ask you a question as well. But just first things first, I forgot to mention. I mean, I think one of the aspects that we do underestimate is Arsenal for the best part of the last decade have been largely, apart from a few cup triumphs, have been largely irrelevant at the highest level, right? In terms of at the top of the Premier League knockings, and they obviously haven't qualified for the Champions League for quite some time before last season. And I think there's such a feel-good factor about the club finally, where there's this good connection between the fans. There's no disgruntlement. Everyone's kind of pulling in the same direction. I mean, their last major signing that turned heads was 10 years ago with Mesut Ozil, bought 42 million from Real Madrid. But even he wasn't coveted in the same way that Declan Rice was, if you get my point. It was a bit of a kind of undercover signing last day of the transfer window. So I think there's somewhat to be said about Arsenal landing a player that 12 months ago you'd have thought is maybe going to end up at Chelsea or maybe going to end up at, maybe Liverpool or somewhere. There's something symbolic about landing arguably the most premier central midfielder that was available in the market, at least from the Premier League. So there's just something symbolic, I think, that resonates with the club, with the rest of the players, with the rest of the staff, and that can propel you potentially in terms of moving forward to land big trophies. I think there is something symbolic sometimes when you make these type of big signings, and obviously they've broken the Premier League record in terms of transfer fee. But I did want to ask you a question. We talk about his potential, we talk about his lack of goals, but one of the players we featured heavily on this podcast at the end of the season was Rodri. And if I asked both of you that, what do you think Rodri's valuation is, bearing in mind he plays that number 6 role or whatever, number 6, number 5, that kind of defensive midfield role, what do you think his valuation is currently in the market?
How old is Rodri?
I think he's 26. He was 26 unless he's had a birthday in the last few weeks, but yeah.
Rodri should comfortably be 100 mil. Comfortably.
Now, but when we think about him, we don't think goals. Now, he's got a few crucial
goals.
No.
Yeah, of course. That's not his role. That's not his role.
But that's what I would sort of say. I mean, it was interesting. I had a chat with a friend of mine about Declan Rice, and he made a really interesting point. His point was, if you're buying a player for 100 million, what you should expect is that if there's a key moment in the game, or if there's a must-win game, is he the player that perhaps will score the goal, or is he somebody? With Rodri, he's come up at crucial times. Gundogan last season, Aston Villa, not last season. Oh yeah,
the last game of the season.
2-0 down. It's that type of player that you'd sort of think, yeah, that's worth 100 million, because when it matters, they deliver. And what he was saying about Declan Rice is that he doesn't feel he's that sort of player. That
he isn't.
Yeah, but my only retort to that is, if I ask you to list the top 10 attributes of Rodri, even accounting for recency bias, goals would still be fairly down on the agenda.
This is to Ayub, right?
No, I'm just. I was
because I'm not taking goals into account here.
But it's what Rodri did against. It was key games, key moments. These players step up.
Yeah, and Declan Rice hasn't had that opportunity.
But I'm as I said, it was an interesting argument that was made, and it's a valid argument at this moment in time. But for me, I'm a huge fan of Declan Rice, and I think at Arsenal, he will have the opportunity to demonstrate what it is like in key moments. Maybe a Champions League game, they're a goal behind. Will he do something? So that's the argument made, was if you're paying that sort of money, that's what you really expect, that the value will be at key moments.
You're right. But this is what it comes down to. He's not worth that. Yeah, the clubs, Arsenal have had to pay that for him. Very rarely these days do you get a player that's worth, well, not very rarely, but players that are here and are looking to go here, the ones that are just about trying to break out, their valuation is always stupid. I mean, that's what it's come to now. Like Moses Caicedo, Brighton, he's again up for sale for 100 mil. Like, who the hell's going to play? Like, I'm sure Chelsea will probably look to snap him up at this point. I think they're the front runners for him. But like 100 million, he isn't worth that. But
again, it's that argument, isn't it? That argument that as long as somebody's prepared to pay that sort of money.
Yeah. So the club values him at that, and I understand that. That's what he's worth to them. But if you go off his skill set, ability, and everything, they're not worth 100 mil, these players.
Yeah, I agree with you. And Badge, you made a very good point there. And apologies to our Spotify viewers when Badge was showing when a player goes from good to great. That's what you were alluding to with your hand gestures. But ultimately, you're right. The players that go from good to great are the ones that put a lasting impression on the game. Yeah, they put their imprint on the game, and whether that's to Ayub's point, yeah, whether he scores a crucial goal or a crucial assist or a crucial clearance, whatever it may be, but bringing some tangible value in those crucial moments to deliver big trophies or big wins at the latter stages of the season. So I fully accept that. I just slightly disagree with Graham Souness when he talks about that he doesn't have that cuteness of pass. That's what he talks about. And I agree there's some question marks about that. I think he has. Badge, obviously, we've discussed this offline. You don't quite believe he does, and that's fine. But my point I'm just making is, in a very clear way, I agree that's what you need, especially when you're playing for a big team. You're coming up against low blocks. You're having to break teams down. You can't just be passing sideways, very safe passing. You've got to penetrate 10 to 15 yards in between the lines. I just think that's not necessarily what we think about when I think of Rodri. He's an amazing footballer, don't get me wrong, he's a top footballer at playing at the top of his game. But I don't think, he's got that cuteness of passing between breaking lines and all the rest of it. I just think, yes, that's a part of his game he needs to develop. I just think if you're dominant in the middle of the park, and he's number 1 in interceptions in the Premier League, 9th in tackles, if you're dominant in your position and you're the best of the best, and you, again, bring some advantage to your team, a material advantage to your team, you can be worth that amount. In the end, he might be the reason why Arsenal go a long way to maybe delivering a Premier League title. So let's see.
But you're right. But at the same time, Rodri is 100 million because of what he's done at City. He's elite. Declan Rice is not. Declan Rice, as of now, is not an elite. He's not an elite midfielder. He's not like the best of the best. Rodri is the best of the best in his position. He doesn't need to do what you're saying there, like breaking lines with passes and all that. He doesn't need to do that. He's got KDB. He had Gundogan. He's got Bernardo Silva. He doesn't need to do that. He just needs to. He's there to be the pivot. He's tidy. He wins the ball back. He reads the game well, and his short passing is great. And his reading the game is fantastic. But
I think, do you not sort of feel that when key in big games, he always shows up. He's absolutely impeccable. And
he's great. He's a great player.
But Badge, that's exactly where Rice is going to play. Is my point. So my point is, why would a Graham Souness expect that kind of cuteness and all this? When I'm saying he's going to be playing that pivot role for Arsenal.
Forget Graham Souness. He calls Casemiro Steady Eddie.
Apologies, Graham. But
no, not apologies. Ridiculous views. But I don't like this notion that Rice hasn't had a chance. He's played with England on the biggest stage, and he's got to finals of a Euros. He's had platforms to do,
and he's played well for large parts of his England career. He's been one of the better players
in those games. He's been good, and again, he's industrious. He gets about, gives it his all. He's an engine. You can't remind me of any kind of pass he's put like that. He put someone through, or he ran the game with like his passing, or he's gotten into the box, gotten any goals. The goals I'm not too asked. The goals I'm not too bothered about. But I don't think his passing range is great. I think he has a good pass on him. He's got a decent diagonal on him. But I don't think his passing range is amazing.
I don't think he's that sort of player, though. Would you not sort of say
so
that?
What is he?
No, but
this is...
Is he a 6? Well, first and foremost, is he a 6 or is he an 8?
No, I think there's an opportunity for him perhaps to evolve into an 8 because his athleticism.
He should be an 8
because his athleticism is perhaps one of his better attributes. I think we'd all agree there. I think he's going to play in the pivot role, as in that kind of Rodri role. What I would say from a technical perspective, very quickly, is I think playing for West Ham when you don't have a recognised striker, when you don't have any. Let me finish my point. There's a lot more area to cover when you're playing for a team that's relatively poor or average in terms of keeping possession. So my point is, you're having to cover left, right, forward, lots of recovery runs, whereas Arsenal are more proficient in keeping the ball. So it's a case of actually his game, I wouldn't say it will become easier. He'll actually have to show a little bit more in terms of making sure he's intercepting when teams are trying to counter against Arsenal, because Arsenal will have more of the ball, trying to maybe take a few more risks to break the lines, which sometimes results in counterattacks. He'll just have to show, to your point, Badge, a little bit of that offensive ability to actually keep things ticking, keep things moving. Arsenal have got Odegaard, obviously maybe Havertz playing in that other position, replacing Xhaka. So they've got other technical players who can perhaps create an assist, and Odegaard was one of the best last season. I think he'll have to do less recovery running at Arsenal than West Ham. It'll be less chasing because we'll be more proficient at keeping the ball. It's just whether or not, and you're absolutely right, whether he can go from being very good because he's an incredible athlete to becoming a great player.
But then where does this come in? Where does this come in? So he has to do more running at West Ham. He's got to do more recovery running. He's just got to run in general because they don't have possession as much. But then, so what we say, like, what is he good at? What is he good at? He's good at
tackling. I mean, if you look at the stats, he retrieves the ball. He's a good tackler. He's a good reader of the game.
Yeah, that's good.
He can bring the ball forward as well. I think he can. I mean, I think perhaps I'd like to see him much more involved in offensive play as well, to sort of to come into the box late.
Right.
Things like
Yeah,
that. I
yeah.
think he's, in the old days, they would have called him a box-to-box midfield player.
Yeah, yeah.
And I
Right.
think he's got enough technical. I mean, he's got excellent technical ability.
Has-
He's got tremendous energy. I think at Arsenal, we will see a great player. I think at West Ham,
What are you going off? The guy, like, he does a lot of running in that side because West Ham don't hold the ball enough. At Arsenal, they're going to hold the ball more, so he's not going to be running as much. But then, what are you basing it on? Because his passing, I proven his passing to be like top notch. His passing's decent. But then we're calling him a top midfielder. But then what are you basing it on?
And listen, respect to Jared Bowen, because I think he's a top player. But if you're playing forward to, if you've got ahead of you, well, next to you've got Susek, who's a good workman-like Premier League player. Don't get me wrong. But in front of you, you've got Antonio, who's, let's be honest, again, workman-like. I would say he's not an elite striker in any way, shape, or form. They've had Scamacchia, they've had Lanzini, Benrahma on the other side. Look, he's going to a better team. Obviously, of that there is no dispute. And I think the question is, he has to simply just prove it. I can't definitively say that he's going to be a great player.
I know that, but what I'm saying is, what are you basing on the fact that he's a top player? Because
I think he's been exceptional. He's been exceptional.
I'll be honest with you,
in a side
which has
always been struggling.
Honestly,
in the Premier League.
I believe genuinely his ability to keep rotating the ball is a little underrated. Like, he does keep knocking the ball. He constantly shows for his scent. And again, we'll need to see that. He'll need to improve that if that's what you believe.
That was one of my main knocks against him. Like, especially when I see him for England, like, it sounds dumb now because of the season Calvin Phillips has had, but I used to actually quite like Phillips in out the two of them, because Phillips used to actually go at least for England, because you might bite my head off here, but for England, when I used to watch him for England, the two of them, Phillips was the one that was more positive in his passing than Rice. Rice would get about more and Phillips would sit more, but Phillips would be more positive with his passing, and that is why I preferred him over Declan Rice. But I've not seen anything from Rice where he shows positivity in his passing.
Yeah, and let's see. What you'll see at Arsenal, in my opinion, is they've got two wingers who will be forcing that back line backwards. There will be a lot more space for Declan Rice to receive the ball, and he won't be needing to play sideways, because that back line is going to be so worried about the speed of Martinelli and Saka in behind. He's just going to get lots of space to look forward and play passes into Odegaard and into whether it's Havertz.
I'm not saying he can't. I've not seen it, so I don't know what the basis is of the fact that he's this top tier midfielder, but all his strengths lie in the fact that West Ham most of the time played without the ball, so that his main attributes, which are his engine, his running, his getting back, his tackles, they are all highlighted. But then what you need for a top midfielder is also to round out your passing game, and I've just not seen that from him, and that's why I'm not sure.
It's all right, you'll see it next season.
He might do,
and we'll come back to this video.
I love his personality, though. I think his mentality is superb, and I'd want that at United 100%. That kind of mentality. He wants to win it all, which again begs the question why he's going Arsenal. But we'll see.
Watch the last show. Ois actually gave an account as to why he might be going to the Arsenal, but obviously you've not been watching the shows.
It ain't for trophies. No.
So the conclusion is, it's like I think he's worth it. I think he will be a tremendous asset.
How though?
He will be an asset because he's got all the attributes. And Ois has just pointed out.
How's he worth 100 mil?
I love how
it's what we've said. As long as
forget
somebody's
100
prepared to pay him,
how is he a top midfielder?
He's a top midfield player because he's in my opinion, he's proven for England as well. I think he's been a standout player for England as well.
By the way, was I wrong for England with what I said?
I think you're being harsh. I don't think you.
I mean, one could flip it and say, well, England have got to the latter stages. One of the reasons was Declan Rice. I'm making that argument. I'm just saying it depends which side of the coin you look at.
My argument was I'd see Phillips be more positive with his passing for England.
Phillips only what Phillips has is a better range of passing. He can ping the 40-yard, 50-yard pass, but there's so many other frailties to his game. I mean, I'm hugely critical. I don't think he's good enough for England, but he plays. Rice is considerably superior in an all-round game. I think passing, yes, absolutely. I'll give it to KP Phillips. But in terms of general play,
how much
no
better?
chance.
Well, considering you're saying he's worth 100, how much better is he than Alexis McAllister that's just gone to Liverpool for 40.
Yeah, but that's subject to a clause in his contract. They renewed his contract and put that specific clause in that he could leave for that amount.
All right. Even if you forget the price tag.
No, I think with the different players, McAllister's a lot more technical. He doesn't play in the pivot role. He plays a bit further forward.
Plays 8.
Yeah, but
I expect Rice to be an 8. I don't expect him to be a 6.
I
think with his style, he should be an 8.
Well, we'll leave that in Arteta's hands, not yours. But yeah, I mean, in the end,
so if Arteta is watching, we got Souness watching, we got Arteta watching.
I like just to finish off on this topic. So, Badge, you say he's not worth 100 million. That's fine. That's your opinion. So, let's say when Arsenal were making a series of bids,
I forget the valuation.
75. What were you expecting Arsenal to do? Well, hang on, he's not worth 100, so we're going to walk away. I mean,
no. All right, less valuation, but more. I just don't think he's a top midfielder yet. Right. But then it's weird because people say he is, but then
I think he's very good.
When you ask to justify it.
But is he a standout player in the Premier League? Is he a standout player in the Premier League?
I don't think he is. How's he a standout player in the Premier League?
I beg to differ. I think he, for most of the games that he plays for West Ham, he's one of their better players. I think he.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean he's a standout player.
No, but he.
The champions of Europe put a bid in for him. Yeah. Now. I'm just saying, so.
All right, then to that degree, they signed Calvin Phillips.
Yeah, but Calvin Phillips, we know it was just for the
English quarter.
No. Hey, come on, you can't make one.
You shot yourself in the foot there, Owen. You shouldn't have said that. No. You're giving the man ammunition.
What I'm saying is, no. Are you arguing that Calvin Phillips is in Declan Rice's league?
Not right now. No, absolutely not.
Let's move on to the next topic.
That wasn't the argument, but go on, carry on. It's good. It's good. You're the host.
Badge, it's good to have you back.
Yeah. But talking about transfers, okay, let's see if we can get some agreement. And maybe this man Badge might actually sort of wax lyrical now. Mason Mount, I don't think it's been finalised, but it seems to be, again, quite close to being finalised. So it's 60 million, I believe. For Mason
55 and 5.
Is it all right? Okay, 55 and 5. So I think 55 and 5 adds to 60. So I'll call it 60. Right, Mason Mount. What's your thoughts? Manchester United, are they getting a quality player? Are they getting a world-class player?
They're getting a quality player for too much money because I think me and my other United friends, I was going to say, my other friends that are United fans, I think we all were in agreement, and it seems to be the norm on Twitter as well. There was a limit. I think 50 was enough, but then you're not going to miss out on a guy for extra 5 million. So I can see why they've done it. I won't lose sleep over it. But considering he had a year left, it's slightly more money than you'd hope. But again, 24, much the same as Rice. 24 years old, technically very, very sound. I've liked him at Chelsea, and I think not that any of our viewers would be privy to this, but the Chelsea fans that we speak to, I've always said I do like him. I like his ability on the ball. I like his work rate and everything. I'm happy with the signing. I think it's a good one. 24-year-old for that price in this market where you show a little bit of ability and you're bloody 100 mil. That's not a knock on Rice against some other players in the market right now. So for that, I think it's completely worth it. I think it's a good signing. I think it's miraculous, absolutely miraculous that Man United have had a deal agreed in June. That's a good sign in itself. With the takeover being in the way it is, it's an absolute mess. So I am glad that we are actually getting a signing in. Because at the moment it feels like Ten Hag's being shafted a little bit with the way the Glazers are treating this takeover. So funds are up in the air. It's reported apparently we only have 100 mil. So if 55's gone on Mount, the other 5, by the way, apparently they're very difficult targets to hit. I'm not 100% sure what they are, but I've read that they're quite difficult to hit. So that's why I'm keeping it as 55 and 5.
You're just making that up, aren't you?
No. Honestly, apparently it's trophy based and stuff like that. Which at the moment, if we win one,
you won one last year. You won one last year. Come on, Batch.
Yeah, one. They can have a mill. But But yeah, I think it's a good signing. I like him. It'll be interesting to see how he works with Bruno, given they both like the 10 more than the 8. But I think we'll see a rotation there. And it's a positive start, I guess, to a transfer window, which I don't think United fans are expecting much right now, especially with the takeover not happening as of yet. And all the target seems to be on Onana, so we'll see. I think that'll be the 100 million spent, and then we still need a striker. But as of now, I think Mason Mount, good signing. Relatively proven in the Premier League, 50 mil. He's got good experience, Champions League at a top club as well. So yeah, I'm
a happy United fan.
I'm happy with it.
Good. What's your thoughts, Lewis, on Mason Mount?
If you'd said 12 months ago that neither Declan Rice nor Mason Mount would be at Chelsea Football Club going into season 23-24, I would have been quite surprised, because there was always talk that Declan Rice would return back to his boyhood club, Chelsea. And Mason Mount, before the Todd Bowley takeover, or the takeover led by Todd Bowley, the offers were there in terms of the contract piece, and something clearly over the last 6 to 9 months has gone sideways. If rumours are to be believed, he was offered contract renewal of over 200k a week, which was rejected. Again, that's if you believe the report. So it seemed like this is a club where he's come through the academy. It looked a done deal as of, let's say, 6-9 months ago. And then, like you said, the takeover, things have gone sideways. And I don't know whether that's just a lot of the upheaval at Chelsea, whether he knew obviously he's going to secure big wages. Obviously at United, he'll be getting, rumours are that he's going to be receiving something along the lines of 250k a week. I don't know. We'll have to see. But the point is, in terms of his abilities, and with Badge, I do like Mason Mount a lot. He's 4 days younger than obviously his best friend Declan Rice. They both came through the Chelsea ranks, so they're both exactly the same age. And the question about him is,
goodness me, that's proper attention to detail, isn't it?
Deep dive.
Yeah, 10th of January 1999. But no, look,
10th of Jan.
10th of January 1999. Yes,
I'm 17th of Jan. Go on, Mason.
He's 20. He's 24. Yeah, but no, look, he's had a really interesting path when you think about it, and in some ways he's been a little bit, I don't want to say fortunate, because I think it'll be taken the wrong way, but what I mean is Chelsea are not, I say renowned, but they've got a few players coming through the academy and playing within the first team, Reece James, Chalobah, to name a few. But if you look at Mason Mount, obviously he had that big season. Was it in the Championship with Derby, and it was a little fortuitous because obviously Frank Lampard was the manager, and Lampard, obviously with who would have good contacts at Chelsea, brought him over on loan. He had a great season at Derby, 11 goals in 44 games, took him to help them get to the playoff final. Obviously, Ayub, I won't mention who they beat in the playoff semi-finals, but playoff final against Villa. He then moves to Chelsea. He then goes back to his parent club, because if you remember, Frank Lampard then became manager of Chelsea. So in some ways, he was fortunate to some extent that he had a manager who believed in him a lot. And look, young players need managers who believe in him to give him a bit of a chance to shine. So he comes to Chelsea. He's been quite a durable player in his first 3 seasons at Chelsea. He's played over 30 Premier League games. So it was only last season when he picked up an injury that he's been a little, I want to say unreliable, but he's been a bit unfortunate with injury. But the big question mark is, what's his best position? And I think sometimes he gets a bit of an unfair label placed against him, because he comes across quite a nice young lad. It's still all question, what's he really, really good at? He's kind of a good at everything. What's he great at? And I think the question is, what's his main position now? Chances are he might play in the 8, but I think he gives United some real versatile options. There have been times this season when he's played, if you think Badge, he's played Fernandes wide right at times when he's just wanted that extra midfielder in. And I think now he could play around a little bit with that kind of Fernandes, Sancho, Mount inside. And you need a squad.
Mount's done that for England as well, and he's
exactly
off the right kind of thing.
Yeah, and when you've got a Champions League to compete in, you need players, you need personnel. So in the end, again, Chelsea fans that I speak to, they think his best position is between the lines, but that's not a position that a lot of again, the more and more the game becomes tactical and strategic, this kind of in between the lines is not necessarily somewhere you can, kind of find so much. So it'll be a question about where does he play? Is it central or is it in that inside right channel? But again, great to have someone who's got lots of options. And if you look at his career, spent a bit of time in the Netherlands on loan at Vitesse. He's gone to the Championship. He's broken through at Chelsea. I think at his age, I think this is the time for him, a bit of a springboard to really go on and kick on and show those who are maybe perhaps non-believers that he can actually excel at a top club. And you mentioned it, Badge, obviously helped Chelsea land that Champions League, got the assist for the Havertz goal against Manchester City. So he's played in big games, big moments. He's not established himself, I would say, in that England squad. So I imagine that's a big ambition of his as well, especially going into the European Championships next season. So no, I like the player a lot. You're right. 55 plus 5, a little much. But again, if Ten Hag believes he's the guy who he wants, I guess they should pay a little bit of a premium if he's going to add significant value to that team.
Can't add much more to what you guys have said. I think you're absolutely right. I think he's packed a lot in. He's only 24, but he's as you sort of said that he played for I think Vitesse Arnhem, and it's really, I was quite surprised by the record that he had at Vitesse Arnhem. He scored a number of goals, great assists. And I think, talking to my lad who supports Chelsea, said that that's where Ten Hag first came across Mason Mount. So he's had an eye on him for a number of years. So I like the fact that he's had experience in a foreign country as well. At quite a young age. He must have been, what, about 19, 20 when he did that. So that's really
Vitesse
good.
and Chelsea have a relationship, don't they? So.
Oh, right, okay. But he did fantastically well. I mean, for a guy of that age, albeit it's not the strongest league, but it's obviously a league when you're 18, 19, 20. It obviously must be a challenge. At Derby, he was fantastic. He really was. And it's a tough league, the Championship. It's not easy. You don't sometimes get much time on the ball. It's all hustle and bustle. So he stood out and he was exceptional. And at Chelsea, I think he's always been quite solid. I think the last 2 seasons he scored double figures in the Premier League. So I think he's somebody that scores goal. Talking to my lad, he sort of says that his ideal or best position is part of the front three, but on the right-hand side. So that really is where he excels. But I think he's such a smart individual that I think he's quite flexible. He can adapt. I think Ten Hag likes him, so I'm sure he's going to try and bring out the best in him. So I think a wonderful signing. For me, 55, 60 million in this market is fine. I think it's absolutely fine. He's
it'd be a good deal. I think it's just the fact that he had a
1
year.
Yeah,
that's the only thing. But again, it's not bad money. It's not bad money.
So I think it's good. So I think we're all quite aligned on this. It's a good signing, and he'll certainly bring plenty of value to Manchester United.
Can I also just say on that? I like how he has to prove himself, even though he's been at Chelsea, a top club in England, and he's won the Champions League with them. He's performed well for him. Last season, everyone at Chelsea was awful. Season before, he had 10 and 11 in the league, 10 goals, 11 assists, and I'm sure he was closer to 20 in all comps. But yeah, I like that he has to prove himself, and he's not quite regarded as a top midfielder.
Yeah, and I think the England thing plays a bit.
West Ham are.
Yeah, and I think that England thing does play a part. You know, he sees this, obviously, again, good friend Declan Rice, one of the first names on that England team sheet. He'll want to break in and establish himself. Now it's difficult in the England front three. You've got arguably Kane, Saka, Rashford, probably dead certain. Then you got a bit of Grealish and a few others kind of chipping in terms of additional squad options, but. Again, middle of the park, there could be some options there. You've got Bellingham, Rice. What's that third option? Is it Arnold? Could it Mount? So there's opportunities there, but he'll wanna go to Germany next year in the European Championships. And you're right. I think a player, young, hungry, determined to prove a point, I think United will see the benefits of that for sure.
Excellent. That's why I think he should adapt as an 8 a bit more as well. Help his chances, help his scores. Go on, are you sorry, mate?
Agree? No, it's fine. And just as a final bit of transfer news, this one's all done deal, all sorted. So James Maddison, we're talking about midfield players. James Maddison going to Spurs for, I believe it's 40 million, wasn't it? It was 40 million.
Yeah.
A player that I think is excellent. Slightly older. I think he's about 26, 27. Bajish, I don't know. There was a look on your face, which sort of gave me the impression that you're not a massive fan of James Maddison.
What? I
Oh,
love
right,
James
okay.
Madison.
Oh, right, okay. No,
Oh, I love
I
Maddis.
was misreading.
That
Right,
might
so,
be that is a steal, mate. 40 million for Spurs for James Maddison.
when you get relegated, I'm afraid that's one of the costs to the selling side.
How do you sign a guy without any competition of the quality of James Maddison? 40 million. I think it's superb business by Spurs. I don't say that often. But what a signing for them. What a signing. And if they can keep a hold of Kane, which they might actually do, I wouldn't be surprised. That's suddenly becoming a nice little unit with Son, Maddison, Kane, Kulusevski. I think he's a top player. I know he's been relegated, but again, for Leicester last season, out of all their team, Maddison, whenever he played, he actually looked like Leicester had some hope because he was doing some good things. His creativity is great. He's got a nice eye for a pass. He's got a good strike on him, gets you goals. I think he's a bit underrated, James Maddison, if I'm being honest. Good. I think it's a good signing. Good signing in general for Spurs. Value is top notch. I don't think there'll be many transfers this summer, that are better value for the player you're getting than 40 mil for James Maddison. And again, he's in the peak. I think he's 26, 27, like you said. So
yeah.
basically these peak years, I think great signing. Great signing.
Your thoughts, Ois?
I agree with Badge's first statement without a shadow of a doubt. Value-wise, that's incredible value. I think Newcastle were in for him, to be fair, in terms of competition, but I think Spurs stole a march and obviously managed to secure the deal. I think it's 40-45, but even still, great value. Yes, you're absolutely right. It's because Leicester obviously got relegated. That will diminish the value. They're not going to be able to command top dollar. Last year, I think Saka and Salah, I think, were the two players only just to get double-digit goals and assists. I believe Maddison came one short, 10 goals, 9 assists. In the last 3 seasons, he's fifth in terms of combined goals and assists behind 3 absolute killers in Kevin De Bruyne, Harry Kane, and Mohamed Salah, and Bruno Fernandes as well. But that goes to show the kind of company he's keeping in terms of that kind of productivity in the final third of the pitch. I think the only question mark on James Maddison, and you mentioned it, Badge, in terms of creativity, and I think I'll say something, having watched him very closely, I think is definitely underrated. We talk about technical ability, so we think, passing, Ivan Edo kind of threads that ball through, and he's not even really had a top striker over the last couple of seasons. Vardy's been on the way, and let's be honest, Iheanacho's a bit hit and miss. Patson Daka, again, hit and miss. I think now if they can hold on to Kane, and you've got Son and Kulusevski vertical running, he's going to be absolutely great. But I think one of the things that's underrated about him, I've watched him so closely, is his ability to retain the ball in tight spots and get out of tricky situations is absolutely second to none. And he does it in a number of ways, but he very rarely loses the ball in terms of when it's given to him in slightly challenging circumstances. So outside of the foot, inside of the foot, a beautiful right foot, great free kicks, a set piece. Yeah, absolutely. He can get you a few goals from there. So I think for Spurs, ultimately it comes down to keeping Harry Kane. If Harry Kane stays, that enhances James Maddison's value even more so, because he needs a striker to kind of get the fruits of his kind of passes.
I think it almost helps. Would you sort of say that the fact that they've signed Maddison, that may tempt Harry Kane perhaps just to because at the moment there seems to be very little talk about Harry Kane moving. So this is
it's a topic for another show, but I think those noises will come in due course. Just need to maybe let the situation at Old Trafford resolve itself first.
That's
but
what
look,
Badger's hoping for.
Exactly. But one final point. Ange Postecoglou, he's going into his debut season in the Premier League. He tends to play a 4-3-3. Again, we'll see what he plays at Spurs. And his style of 4-3-3 normally is wingers really high. His 2 attacking midfielders can then kind of press high as well. And I think that's where Maddison will be looking to play with Son and Kulusevski probably wide. And I think that could get the best out of him. And I think one of the other things that he will absolutely benefit from is Bentancur's return after injury. I actually thought he was one of the best midfielders. I mean that in the time.
agreed.
in the time he was playing this season, early on, if you watch a lot of the Spurs games, he was absolutely everywhere. I could not believe how energetic this footballer was. It's just he got injured at the wrong time for Spurs and for himself. Otherwise, he'd have established himself as a top player, I think.
Yeah. And to Ayub's point, he's not a goal scorer, but he was getting important winning goals for Spurs when it mattered. So he was stepping up.
Yeah, I think he got like a last minute winner against Bournemouth, was it? Or was it against one of the other teams? But you're absolutely right. So his return in the middle of the park, Maddison then being given that opportunity to drift, because that's where he's great at, just between the lines, finding space. And again, his eye for a pass is absolutely second to none. You're talking like kind of in that De Bruyne, Trent Alexander-Arnold type, even go on the Bruno's league. But that type of creativity. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I don't know whether it moves the needle so much with Harry Kane. I think that's an independent situation personally. But for Spurs, this is what they needed. And if they do manage to keep Kane, this will be the first time where you think, wow, they've got more than just one threat. It's not just Kane or Son. They've got like this third option who can get you goals and assists, and that can make all the difference when you're trying to push for Champions League spots. So, yeah, let's see. Great signing.
I don't really think there's an English midfielder like him. Another English midfielder like him. I think he brings he brings something different to the table.
He's classy, isn't he?
Yeah. Like you said about the tight spaces, he's very underrated. Like people don't think about that, but he is good at receiving it, turning and keeping that ball. And then his eye for the pass, superb. So I think for him it's a great move, especially if they keep a hold of Kane. But yeah.
Ayub, just before you go, you'll remember him because I know Leeds had a couple of tough seasons in the Championship, but you remember.
I was going to actually say,
absolutely.
Absolutely. He was a standout player when he was at Norwich. It really was. And I was quite surprised that not many, or if there was, I mean, I wasn't aware of it, but I was expecting many clubs to be in for him because he was always destined for bigger and better things. And I think his trajectory has always been in one direction, that's going up. He's one of those players that if he's not on the team sheet because he's injured, it gives a tremendous boost. He was instrumental to Leicester's success. And Baz, you're absolutely right that they got relegated. But if there was anybody who was just about going to keep them up, it was Maddison. Because he was, even in a dire season, he was a standout player. I think he's exceptional. He's excellent. I think he's very intelligent, and he is approaching the absolute peak. And I think Spurs is a perfect fit. I think there's I've spoken to a number of Spurs fans, and they've always wanted a player like Maddison. I mean, in fact, they've always sort of said that if we can have a James Maddison at Tottenham Hotspur's football club, it just absolutely takes us to another level, because really, if there's one jigsaw piece missing, it was perhaps a player like Maddison. So I think fantastic. I don't know. I mean, you're absolutely right. I'm sure Kane is not going to suddenly change his mind based on the fact that Maddison has come. But certainly, I think if he's quite happy at Tottenham Hotspur's football club, Maddison coming, I think, with the players that you've also mentioned who are there, it makes them a serious force to be reckoned with next season. So maybe I suppose if he is thinking about, well, look, there's a high potential that now with Maddison, maybe they might get one or two more players in, that there's a potential to win things. Because if that's his argument that, right, I need to move to win things, then perhaps certainly signing Maddison and maybe one or two other players, it really increases their chances. So interesting to see. And obviously it's a conversation we'll have for next time or another time.
I wanted you to have your piece, Ayub. I didn't want to interrupt, but let's not be silly.
I was going to say, but just a very quick question to Baz just before we finish. I think his physical intensity off the ball when teams are defending is something that's held against him, and I have seen that in games in terms of his physical intensity off the ball. I wouldn't hold it too far against him, but do you think Badge, because he's 10 million or so cheaper than Mason Mount, Mason Mount's a lot more industrious, a lot more energetic in the final third, but you'd argue Maddison's got a little bit more quality on the ball. I think that would be fair to say. Would you have taken Maddison instead of Mount?
100%. I'd take Maddison at United, 100%. The only thing is Maddison's more, he's strictly a 10, I'd say. Strictly a 10. Mount brings that nice versatility with him. 8, 10, or even off the right.
He's a much better presser. I think Mason Mount, I mean, there's certain, there's certain elements that he's got that Maddison hasn't. But I think you're right. I think if given the choice, if you've got the option of picking the two, I think most people will go for Maddison. He almost seems to be.
I don't know about that. Like, I didn't say that.
Hmm?
I said I'd take Maddison all day at 40 million. Without a doubt, I would have taken him. I would have said.
Would you not sort of say that in terms of at this moment in time, if you had the option of the two players, forget the price, who would you choose?
No, I'd take Mount. Only because, because Mount fits what we need more than Maddison does.
Okay.
But for the value, like I would have 100% taken Maddison 40. I think that's a steal.
It's
He's a top player.
Maddison is a little more similar on the ball to Fernandez, but Fernandez works a lot harder. Yeah. Like he runs a lot, like defensively and offensively. So maybe to Badge's point, they're probably thinking, well, where does Fernandez and Maddison kind of fit in? So to speak, we've got someone who can do kind of.
And Fernandez is better on Fernandez. A little bit. Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. But I think Maddison's top. I would have taken him, but if I had to pick between the two, it'd be Mount. It would be Mount.
Yeah, fair enough.
Fair enough, and he's obviously gone to Man United, so your wish has been answered.
Look how that worked out.
Right, we've sort of overrun at least what I thought. I thought it was going to be a nice tight show, but obviously Badger's come and just he's got plenty to say. So, but on that note, we're going to call it a day. But it's been an absolute pleasure to welcome you back, Badge.
Thank you very much.
It's been nice to hear your opinions, certain controversial sort of views, as always, straight shooting from the hip as usual. OS, as always, a pleasure, the ever reliable, the ever present. So thank you for your time, guys. And until the next time, which will probably be sometime next week. Bash, what's the line?
I've forgotten.
Stay outside. Oh, all right. Okay, I forgot to sort of say. Right. Smash a like, subscribe if you haven't. Please put in a comment. We absolutely want you to comment on what we are obviously talking about. This should be a nice juicy one, right? Is Declan Rice worth 100 million? What's your views on Maddison? What's your views on Mount? Are they good signings for the respective sides? So please put in your comments. And until the next time, stay onside.